For 300 years, humanity sent messages into space. Radio signals, mathematical codes, music, and greetings in every language traveled outward from Earth at the speed of light. Scientists built massive dishes pointed at the stars. Children drew pictures of friendly aliens. The whole world waited for an answer. The answer never came. What humanity did not know was that someone was listening. Far across the galaxy, in a chamber made of crystal and metal, the rulers of 47 alien civilizations had gathered to discuss the strange signals coming from a small blue planet. "Hi, Arbiter." Vorith of the Keth Dominion stood before the assembly. His scales were dark red, and his eyes held the coldness of a creature who had ordered the death of entire worlds. He waved one clawed hand dismissively at the holographic image of Earth floating above the council table. "A primitive species," he announced. "They burn dead plants for energy. They fight wars over imaginary lines on their single planet. They have not even reached their own moon more than a few times. Why should the council waste time on such creatures?" Ambassador Tessara of the Volanthi Collective raised an objection. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the light in beautiful patterns. "Our laws say we must contact all new species. We should at least send observers." "And what would observers find?" Vorith replied with a harsh laugh. "Another species that will destroy itself before it ever leaves its star system. We have seen this story 100 times. Better to mark them in our records and forget them." The vote was held. 39 species voted to ignore Earth. 8 voted to make contact. The motion passed. A clerk entered Earth's location into the Great Database under Category 7, noted, but not worth attention. The galaxy moved on. The humans kept sending their hopeful messages into the void. But silence can teach hard lessons. On Earth, the years passed without any reply from the stars. The scientists who had dedicated their lives to listening grew old and died. Their students grew old and died. New generations were born who had never known the excitement of the first searches. Only the disappointment of the endless quiet in the year 2156. The last great radio telescope was shut down. Director Linda Morrison of the United Earth Space Agency stood before the world leaders and spoke words that would change human history. "We have called out to the universe for 300 years, she said. Her voice was tired but steady. No one has answered. Perhaps no one is there. Perhaps no one cares. It does not matter anymore. We must stop waiting for others to save us or guide us. We must save ourselves." That day, something changed in the human spirit. The arguments stopped. The wars cooled. The nations that had spent centuries fighting each other looked up at the stars and saw not hope, but challenge. If the universe would not come to humanity, then humanity would go to the universe. The next 200 years were the most productive in human history. Scientists solved problems that had seemed impossible. Engineers built machines that previous generations could only dream about. The climate was healed. Hunger was ended. Disease was conquered. And when Earth was finally at peace, humans built ships that could cross the distance between stars. The first colony was established in 2203. By 2250, there were 5. By 2300, there were 12. And by 2347, humanity had spread to 18 star systems without ever encountering another living civilization. But they found something else. Admiral Kevin Shaw stood in the command center of the deep space vessel Endeavour, staring at images that made his blood run cold. Before him on the screen was an alien city, or what remained of one. Towers of strange metal lay twisted and broken. Streets that had once held living beings were empty and dark. Everything was covered in the dust of centuries. "This is the 4th one," said Dr. Maria Santos, the ship's chief scientist. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "For dead civilizations in the region we have explored, all of them destroyed at roughly the same time, roughly 10,000 years ago." Kevin studied the ruins. What killed them? Not what, who. Maria pulled up a translation of symbols found in the ruins. They all reference something called the Council, a group of species that rules this part of the galaxy. And according to these records, the Council has a policy. She showed him more translations. Stories of ships that came without warning. Weapons that burned cities from orbit. Entire species erased because they were deemed a threat to Council authority. They called it cleansing, Maria said quietly. When a species grew too advanced too quickly, the Council destroyed them. Not because they had done anything wrong. Just because they might someday become competition. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. Do they know about us? Maria pulled up star charts showing Council territory. It was vast, covering nearly a quarter of the galaxy. Human space was a tiny cluster of dots on the very edge, almost invisible by comparison. We have been very careful to stay out of their detection range, but based on our expansion rate and their patrol patterns, we estimate they will notice us within 15 to 20 years. 15 years? 15 years before an empire that had destroyed countless civilizations would learn that humanity existed. Kevin made a decision in that moment. He sent a message back to Earth, to the leaders of the Terran Republic, that now governed all of human space. He told them what they had found. He told them what was coming, and he told them they needed to prepare. In secret bases hidden in asteroid fields and empty star systems, humanity began to build. Not just ships, but weapons. Not just colonies, but fortresses. The technology recovered from the dead civilizations was studied, reverse-engineered, and improved. Scientists worked day and night to understand systems that aliens had spent thousands of years developing. The humans had won. Advantage the Council had never faced before. Every other species they had encountered had grown up knowing about the Council. Living in fear of the Council, or hoping to join the Council. They had developed with the knowledge that they were not alone. Humanity had grown up in silence. They had learned to depend only on themselves. They had no fear of the unknown because the unknown had ignored them for so long. And they had spent 300 years preparing for a contact that never came, building the foundations of a civilization that could stand alone against anything. Now they would find out if it was enough. In the Council chamber, the file on Earth gathered dust. Category 7. Noted but not worth attention. Just another primitive species that would probably destroy itself before it ever mattered. They had no idea how wrong they were. The Galactic Council had ruled for 12,000 years. In all that time, they had never been surprised. They had never been challenged. They had never met a species they could not control, absorb, or destroy. Scout Commander Preth was nobody important. He was a low-ranking officer assigned to patrol the most boring sector of space, far from the center of galactic civilization. His job was to fly in circles, scan empty star systems, and file reports that nobody would ever read. On this particular day, his scanner showed something that should not exist. Command. I am detecting artificial structures in the Kepler sector, he reported, trying to keep his voice calm. Multiple structures. Orbital stations around at least 6 planets. The reply came slowly. Kepler's sector is listed as empty. Your equipment must be broken. My equipment is working fine. I am looking at cities, Command. I am looking at ships. Hundreds of ships. Maybe thousands. Preth watched his display update with new information. Energy signatures. Communication traffic. Industrial output. All the signs of a thriving civilization existing in a region that Council records said was completely uninhabited. When his report reached the Council chamber, it caused the first real argument in centuries. High Arbiter Vorath dismissed it immediately. Some minor species that escaped our notice, he said. We will send diplomats to evaluate them. If they are useful, we will absorb them. If they are troublesome, we will cleanse them. This is how things have always been done. Ambassador Tassara checked the old records and found something disturbing. Arbiter, this region was surveyed 300 cycles ago. There was only one inhabited planet, a Category 7 world called Earth. The chamber fell silent. Category 7 species do not expand, Vorath said firmly. They do not develop advanced technology. They certainly do not colonize hundreds of systems. And yet it appears they have. The diplomatic fleet was assembled quickly. One large vessel carrying representatives from 12 council species, escorted by 50 warships. It was not an invasion force, but it was enough to remind any primitive species of their place in the galactic order they expected to find frightened. Aliens ready to submit to council authority? They found a single human ship waiting at the border. Commander Patrick. Reyes stood on the bridge of the Dawn's Light, watching the alien fleet approach. His vessel was small compared to the council ships. His crew numbered only 42. By any reasonable measure, he was completely outmatched. But Patrick knew something the council did not. He knew what was hiding just out of sensor range, waiting for his signal. "They are hailing us," reported Communications Officer Dana Walsh. "Put it through." The view screen lit up with the image of High Arbiter Vorath himself. The reptilian leader had insisted on leading the diplomatic mission personally, confident that his presence would intimidate the primitives into immediate surrender. "Unknown vessel," Vorath announced. "You have entered space claimed by the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and prepare to be boarded for evaluation. Resistance will result in destruction." Patrick allowed himself a small smile. "I am Commander Patrick Reyes of the Terran Republic. I believe you have been looking for us." Terran Republic. Our records show no such government. "No, I suppose they would not. We have been rather quiet for the last few centuries." Vorath leaned forward, his red scales darkening with irritation. "You will surrender your vessel and accompany us to Council space. Your species will be evaluated for usefulness. If you are found lacking, you will be cleansed like all the others. This is not a negotiation." Patrick's smile faded. His eyes grew hard. "We know about the cleansing's arbiter. We found the ruins of the civilizations you destroyed. We recovered their records, their technologies, their final messages. We know exactly what the Council does to species it considers a threat. Then, you know that resistance is pointless. Know that you have never faced anyone who is ready for." You Patrick nodded to his tactical officer. "You brought 50 warships to intimidate us. Let me show you why that was a mistake." Space around the Council fleet exploded with light. Ships appeared from nowhere, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 400 human warships, each one sleek and angular. Covered in patterns that pulsed with strange energy, Vorath stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "Where did these come from? How did you hide them from our sensors?" "Our sensors are not your sensors," Patrick replied. "Our technology is not your technology. We spent 200 years studying everything we could find about the Council. We know your strengths. We know your weaknesses. And we have prepared for this moment since before you knew we existed. You are still outnumbered in the larger picture. The Council commands 10,000 warships. You cannot defeat us all. Perhaps not. Perhaps we will eventually lose. But you will not live to see it." Patrick's voice carried a weight that made even Vorath pause. "We are offering you a choice, Arbiter. Something your Council has never offered anyone. Leave our space now, return to your masters, and tell them what you found here. Tell them that humanity remembers the silence. Tell them that we remember every species they erased. Tell them that we are coming. Coming for what? For justice. For answers. For a reckoning that is 12,000 years overdue." Patrick leaned back in his command chair. "You have 1 hour to leave our territory. After that, we will demonstrate exactly what happens when you threaten a species that learned to survive without you." The Council fleet retreated. They had no choice. The human ships moved to surround them, weapons powered and ready. Escorting them back to the border like unwanted guests being shown the door, Vorath sat in his command chamber during the journey home, trying to understand what had just happened. The Council had ruled unchallenged for longer than most species had existed. They had crushed every threat before it could grow. Their military technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy, and yet a species they had dismissed as primitive had just humiliated them without firing a single shot. When Vorath returned to the Council, Chamberlain described what he had seen. The reactions ranged from disbelief to panic. Some demanded immediate war. Others suggested diplomacy. A few even proposed surrender, Ambassador Tessera listened to it all and felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Fear? Not fear of what the humans might do, but fear of what the council would do in response. "We have a choice," she told the assembly. "We can treat these humans as we have treated every other species. We can try to destroy them before they grow stronger. Or we can accept that the galaxy has changed, that the old ways no longer work, and that we must learn to share power with others." "The council does not share power," Vorith snarled. "The council rules. Then the council will fall," Tessara replied quietly. "Because I looked into that human commander's eyes, and I saw something I have never seen before. I saw a species that is not afraid of us, and I do not know how to fight something that does not fear." The argument continued for days, but in the end, pride won over wisdom. The council voted for war. The cleansing fleet was the most feared force in the galaxy. 3,000 warships crewed by the best soldiers from a dozen species, armed with weapons that had burned entire worlds to ash. In 12,000 years, no civilization had ever survived their arrival. Fleet Marshal Koros of the Dreth hegemony commanded this terrible armada. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had personally ordered the destruction of more than 20 civilizations. To him, the humans were just another problem to be solved with fire. "We strike their homeworld first," he told his commanders before the assault began. "This Earth? Without their origin planet, the colonies will collapse. Their morale will break. We will hunt down the survivors at our leisure." His officers agreed. It was a simple plan. It had worked countless times before. The fleet entered human space expecting to find panicked defenders scrambling to protect their settlements. Instead, they found nothing. The outer colonies were empty. Every station, every outpost, every orbital platform had been abandoned. The only signs of life were automated beacons broadcasting warnings in hundreds of languages. "Turn back," the messages said. "You are not welcome here." "They run from us," Koros declared with satisfaction, as all inferior species do when they face real power. But his tactical advisor, a young officer named Sandra Cooper who had been captured during a border skirmish and forced into council service, noticed something wrong in the sensor data. "Marshal, these evacuations are too clean, too organized. This is not a panicked retreat. They knew we were coming, and they prepared for it." "Prepared how?" "By fleeing, by moving their people somewhere safe while they wait for us." Koros dismissed her concerns. "Wait for what?" "Their fleet is less than 1,000 ships. We outnumber them 3-1. Even with their strange technology, they cannot defeat us in open battle." The fleet pressed forward toward Earth. They found it defended by a single vessel. The ship was massive. 3 kilometers long, it dwarfed even the Council's largest battleships. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that glowed with inner light, and it hung in orbit above the blue and green planet like a silent guardian. "All ships target that vessel," Koros commanded. "Destroy it." 3,000 weapons fired at once. Plasma beams, explosive missiles, kinetic projectiles traveling at a fraction of light speed. The combined firepower was enough to crack a planet's surface. It struck the human ship squarely and did nothing. The human vessel sat untouched, its shields absorbing everything the Council fleet threw at it without even flickering. Then the patterns on its hull flared brighter, and it fired back. A single beam of light swept across the Council formation. It lasted less than 3 seconds. When it stopped, 600 warships had simply ceased to exist. Koros stared at his displays as casualty reports flooded in. 600 ships, gone in an instant. No debris, no survivors. Just empty space where his forces had been. "It's impossible," he whispered. "No weapon can do this. No shield can block everything we have." The human ship fired again. Another 500 vessels vanished. "Shh. Marshal, we are receiving a transmission," Sandra reported, her voice shaking. "Put it through." The face that appeared on screen was human. Female, middle-aged, with gray-streaked hair. Her expression held no anger, no triumph, no mercy. She looked at Koros the way someone might look at an insect that had wandered into their home. "This is Fleet Admiral Nicole. Barrett of the Terran Defense Force. Your fleet has entered human territory with hostile intent. You have already lost over 1,000 ships. You will lose more. We have 3,000 ships, Koros replied, trying to sound confident. You have one. I have 28. Nicole smiled coldly. Would you like to see the others? Around the human ship, space rippled and tore. More vessels emerged, each one identical to the first. They formed a wall between the Council fleet and Earth, their weapons already charging. Let me explain something to you, Marshal. For 300 years, we called out to the stars and received nothing but silence. We spent that time learning to survive without help. We spent another 2 centuries preparing for the day when someone would finally come to destroy us. You are not a surprise. You are not a threat. You are exactly what we expected. The Council will send more ships. 10,000. 100,000 if necessary. You cannot kill us all. No, Nicole agreed. But we are not going to kill you all today. Today, we are going to let you retreat. We are going to let you return to your council with a message. What message? Nicole leaned forward, her eyes hard as stone. Humanity remembers. We remember the silence. We remember every species you erased, every civilization you burned, every voice you silenced. We have their records now, their histories, their technologies, their dying words. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. And we have decided something, Marshal. The coup. And Syl's reign ends, not today, not tomorrow, but soon. You can prepare for us, or you can ignore us again. But when we come, we will not be calling out for contact. We will be coming to collect a debt that is 12,000 years overdue. The transmission ended. Koros sat in silence, watching his tactical display update with the growing strength of the human formation. 28 ships, each one capable of destroying hundreds of his vessels. His fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just hours ago, was now hopelessly outmatched. All ships retreat, he ordered quietly. Fall back to council space. There were no objections. The mighty cleansing fleet, undefeated for 12,000 years, turned and fled from a species they had dismissed as primitive. On Earth, Nicole watched them go. Her officers celebrated around her, cheering and embracing each other. They had won. They had driven back the most powerful military force in the galaxy without losing a single ship, but Nicole did not celebrate. She knew this was only the beginning. Send word to the colonies, she ordered. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2, Admiral? The Council will come back with everything they have. We need to make sure they find something waiting for them. She turned to face her officers, her expression grave. We won this battle because they underestimated us. They will not make that mistake again. Next time, we need allies. Across human space, encrypted messages began to flow. Ships launched toward regions of the galaxy the Council had never bothered to explore. Diplomats prepared for meetings with species the Council believed they had destroyed. The humans had spent 2 centuries preparing for war. Now they would spend the coming months preparing for something even more difficult, building a coalition that could bring the Council down. The Council chamber had not seen such chaos in 3,000 years. Delegates from 47 species shouted over one another. Old alliances broke apart in minutes. Species that had been partners for centuries now accused each other of weakness and cowardice. At the center of it all sat High Arbiter Vorath, watching his power crumble around him. Fleet Marshal Koros stood before the assembly, his uniform torn, his pride shattered. He had returned from the failed cleansing with less than half his fleet, and now he faced the anger of those who had sent him. You promised us an easy victory, snarled the delegate from the Dreth hegemony. You said the humans were primitive. You said they would fall within cycles. Instead, you lost 1,900 warships. Their technology is beyond anything in our databases, Koros replied. They have weapons that bypass our shields completely. They have ships larger than anything we have ever built. We were not prepared for what we found. Then how did they develop such things? They were burning fossil fuels 300 years ago. No species advances that quickly without help. From the back of the chamber, a quiet voice spoke up. They had help. Just not the kind you were thinking of. Everyone turned to look at historian Prime Siloth of the Archive Collective. Her species dedicated their entire existence to preserving galactic knowledge. They rarely participated in politics, but when they spoke, others listened. I have been studying the region now controlled by humans, Siloth continued. For ancient civilizations once existed there. They were destroyed long before the Council rose to power. We assumed they killed themselves, as young species often do. But the humans found their remains. They found their technology. And they spent 2 centuries learning how to use it. It's impossible, Vorth declared. That technology would be thousands of years old. It would be completely incompatible with modern systems. And yet the humans appear to have made it compatible. Siloth projected images onto the chamber's central display. Human ships, their hulls covered in patterns that matched artifacts from ancient ruins. They took what we dismissed as archaeological curiosities and turned it into weapons we cannot match. The chamber erupted in argument again. But before anyone could call for order, something impossible happened. The main display screen flickered and changed. A human face appeared, looking out at the assembled delegates with calm confidence. Director Nathan Cole, head of Terran Intelligence, had somehow hacked into the most secure communication system in the galaxy. How did you access this channel? Vorath demanded. Your security protocols are outdated, Nathan replied. A natural consequence of 12,000 years without real competition. But I am not here to discuss your failures. I am here to deliver a formal message. He stepped aside, revealing a vast chamber behind him. It was filled with representatives from dozens of species, none of which appeared in Council records. See before you the founding assembly of the Terran Coalition, 23 species representing 147 inhabited worlds, all of whom have chosen to ally with humanity against Council aggression. The Council delegates stared in disbelief. 23 species? That was half the Council's membership. Where had they come from? You may be wondering who these people are, Nathan continued, as if reading their thoughts. They are survivors. Descendants of civilizations you thought you destroyed completely. Refugees who escaped your cleansings and fled into regions of space you never bothered to explore. For thousands of years they hid in fear. But when we found them and offered them a choice between hiding forever or standing with us, they chose to stand. Ambassador Tassara felt her crystalline body grow cold. The Council had always assumed their cleansings were total. No survivors. No witnesses. No one to challenge their version of history. But the galaxy was vast, and apparently they had not been as thorough as they believed. The Coalition makes the following demands, Nathan continued. First, the immediate dissolution of the cleansing fleet and destruction of all weapons designed for planetary extermination. Second, the release of all species currently held under Council control against their will. Third, full payments to the descendants of every civilization the Council has destroyed. Fourth, the resignation of High Arbiter Varath and all officials who authorized cleansing operations. Varath rose from his seat, his scales flushing dark with rage. You dare make demands of us. The Council commands 10,000 warships. We have the resources of 47 civilizations. You are still outnumbered. We captured the technical specifications of your entire fleet during Marshal Koros's retreat, Nathan replied calmly. We have already developed countermeasures for every weapon system you possess. Your numbers mean nothing when your ships cannot harm ours. Then why make demands at all? If you are so powerful, why not simply attack? Nathan's expression shifted. For just a moment, something like sadness crossed his face. Because we are not you. Humanity spent 300 years calling out to the cosmos, hoping for friendship. We received silence. We spent 2 more centuries preparing for war, hoping it would never come. Now it is here, and we are offering you something your Council has never offered anyone. A choice. What choice? End this peacefully. Reform your government. Share power with the species you have oppressed for so long. Join us in building something better than what came before. Nathan paused. Or refuse, and discover what happens when you force a conflict with a coalition that grows stronger every day. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ambassador Tessara rose from her seat. "We should consider their terms," she said quietly. "Never," Voreth snarled. "The Council does not negotiate with lesser species. They're not lesser anymore. They have technology that surpasses ours. They have allies we did not know existed. They have already defeated our greatest fleet. If we continue this war, we will lose. Then we will lose with honor. We will not submit to creatures we once dismissed as primitive." The vote was held. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 31 species voted to continue the war. 16 voted for negotiation. The motion passed. The Council chose pride over survival. Nathan Cole received the news without surprise. He had hoped for a different outcome, but he had prepared for this one. "Begin Phase 3, he ordered. "Full mobilization. Contact all Coalition fleets and tell them to prepare for deployment. Across 147 worlds, ships launched from hidden bases. 8,000 vessels from 24 species, all of them trained in human tactics. All of them armed with human technology. All of them ready to fight." The silence that had shaped humanity for 3 centuries was about to end, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war lasted 6 months. It was not fought with massive fleet battles or planetary bombardments. The Coalition had learned from the Council's own history that empires built on fear can be destroyed by hope. Instead of attacking military targets, Coalition forces struck at the political foundations that held the Council together. They broadcast the truth about the cleansings to every world under Council control. They showed recordings of destroyed civilizations, translated the dying words of species that had been erased from history, and offered evidence that the Council had lied to its own members for thousands of years. The effect was devastating. Species that had lived in fear of the Council suddenly realized they were not alone. Worlds that had been told they would be destroyed if they resisted saw that resistance was possible. And everywhere the Coalition went, they found allies willing to join them. Lieutenant Commander Scott Miller led the assault team that captured High Arbiter Voreth. They did not need to fight their way to him. By the time Coalition forces reached Kethos Prime, the guards had already fled. The great leader of the Galactic Council was found alone in his private chambers, surrounded by empty corridors and silent screens. "You cannot do this," Voreth said as Scott's team secured the room. "I am the High Arbiter. I speak for the Council. The Council is falling apart as we speak," Scott replied. 17 of your member species have already surrendered and requested Coalition membership. Another 12 are negotiating terms. The rest are either running or fighting, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. Then kill me and be done with it. That is what conquerors do." Scott shook his head. "We are not conquerors, Arbiter. We are something you never expected. A species that learned from your mistakes instead of repeating them." He handed Voreth a small device containing detailed records. Every cleansing the Council had ever ordered. Every species they had erased. Every crime committed in the name of galactic order. Names, dates, locations. Evidence that Coalition intelligence had spent decades gathering from the ruins of dead civilizations. You are going to stand trial? Not a human trial, a galactic one. Representatives from every surviving species the Council wronged will hear testimony. They will see the evidence, and they will decide your fate. The Council made difficult choices for the good of all species. The Council made convenient choices for the benefit of its rulers. There is a difference. Scott gestured to his team. But that is for the tribunal to decide. My job is just to make sure you live long enough to face it. The final session of the Galactic Council took place on a neutral space station built specifically for the transition. The Great Chamber that had once held the rulers of 47 species now held representatives from over 60. Most of them former victims of Council aggression. Admiral Nicole Barrett represented the Coalition. She faced the remaining Council delegates across a simple table. No symbols of power, no elevated platforms. Just equals meeting to discuss the future. The terms are straightforward, she said. The Council as a governing body ceases to exist. Individual species retain full control over their own territories. A new galactic assembly will be established with equal representation for all spacefaring civilizations, regardless of technological level or military strength. Former council species will participate as members, not rulers. The remaining delegates looked at each other. There were fewer than 20 of them now. Most had already accepted coalition terms. Those who remained were the hardliners, the ones who still believed the old ways could be restored. "And if we refuse?" one of them asked. "Then you continue fighting a war you cannot win, against an alliance that grows stronger every day. For the privilege of maintaining a system that has already collapsed." Nicole shrugged. "But I think you already know how that will end." The treaty was signed within the hour. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began the long process of rebuilding. Worlds that had been isolated for centuries reconnected with their neighbors. Species that had lived in fear started to hope. And everywhere, the story of humanity spread like fire. The species that had been ignored. The civilization that had called out to the stars and received only silence. The people who had used that silence to make themselves strong, not to conquer others, but to free them. Director Nathan Cole addressed the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. Representatives from over 80 species filled the chamber, with more applying for membership every day. 300 years ago, we reached out to the universe and found nothing, he said. We were alone, or so we thought. In truth, we were being watched, evaluated, and ultimately dismissed as unimportant. The council decided we had nothing to offer and left us to develop in isolation. He paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. That silence taught us something important. It taught us that we could not depend on others to save us or guide us. We had to become our own salvation. And in doing so, we became something the council never expected. A species that saw the galaxy not as a hierarchy to be dominated, but as a community to be built. We did not come here seeking revenge for the silence. We came seeking to ensure that no species ever faces that silence again. That no civilization is dismissed or destroyed because those in power deemed them unworthy. Every voice matters. Every species has value. That is the foundation of what we are building together. Nathan stepped back from the podium. Around the chamber, delegates rose to their feet in applause. Not all of them. Some still clung to old resentments, old fears. But enough in the gallery above, Ambassador Tessara watched the proceedings. She was the last surviving member of the original council that had voted to ignore Earth 3 centuries ago. She had opposed that decision then. She had lived long enough to see how wrong the others had been. Her aide, a young Volanthe who had never known a galaxy under council rule, stood beside her. "Do you think they can really do it? Build something better than what we had?" Tessara considered the question carefully. She watched the humans move among the other delegates, talking, listening, building relationships with species they had never met before the war. "They survived being alone," she said finally. "They built an alliance from the ruins of civilizations we destroyed. They won a war through liberation rather than conquest. And now they speak of community, of equality, of every voice being heard." She turned to face her aide, her crystalline form catching the light. "The council ignored them because we thought they had nothing to teach us. I suspect we were wrong about that. I suspect we were wrong about many things." Below, the assembly continued its work. The first steps toward a new galactic civilization, built not on silence and fear, but on the foundation humanity had created through centuries of patient preparation. The silence had ended, and in its place, something new was beginning to grow.